Well, I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you've had a good day today. I know a lot of people are getting sick. It's that time of year where a bunch of viruses seem to be going around. So I hope that you are staying safe. I hope you're excited to study the Word of God for the next few minutes tonight. But as always, if you are sick or hurting in some way, we want to let you know that we love you and that we are praying for you. And if we can do anything at all for you, we just ask that you would ask us. We are continuing our study in the book of Genesis, and we are at the culmination of creation. We're in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, where we read this: "Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our own likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heaven, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." Well, this is a verse that is a bit puzzling because we have God saying, "Let us," who in the world is the us? Well, the standard Jewish interpretation is God is calling on the angels, right? And this would sort of lend credibility to the view that of the divine council, that God is calling on the divine council. You know, we see the divine council throughout several places in Scripture. Specifically, we see it specifically and especially, I guess I should say, we see it in the book of Job, right? The divine beings, the sons of God, the angels, are before God. So the standard Jewish interpretation is God is calling on the angels. Some others have suggested that God is calling upon previous creation to participate in the creation of man. The standard Christian interpretation, or the traditional Christian interpretation, seems to be that this is a reference to the Godhead. The only problem with saying that this is a reference to the Godhead is that is a New Testament reality. We don't see a lot about the Godhead in the Old Testament. That seems to be something that is revealed to us in the New Testament. This also could be a plural of majesty. That is to say, that God is so great, and as the name suggests, so majestic, that he refers to himself in the plural. We can see some of that in Genesis chapter 1 in verse 1. "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." In the beginning, God, Elohim, plural. Why is Elohim plural? Well, some have said, well, that's referring to the Godhead. Well, the problem with that is, in the beginning, God created. Well, that verb there is singular. So the plural of majesty probably is a good interpretation. But nevertheless, then God said, let us make man in our image, after our own likeness. Well, notice the description: man is to be made in the image of God and in the likeness of God. Those words sort of go hand in hand and sort of build off of one another, definitely sort of temper one another. Image is usually used in the Old Testament to refer to a close representation of something or someone, and likeness, again, sort of tempers that definition, sort of has the idea of a comparison that can be drawn between something or someone, you know, the close comparison that one might have to an object or to another being. Well, what is this saying? Well, this verse, although humans are made in the image of God and in the likeness of God, this verse is, let's say what this verse is not saying first. This verse is not saying that humans are God. We all recognize that. However, we are like God, right? So in a way, humans are like God, but they are not identical to God. Well, then we get down to verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Well, notice the repetition of the verb created. It's used 3 times. Well, why in the world is this verse using the word created 3 times? Well, it's to emphasize that God has reached the goal of creation in his creating man. Now, the word for created here is from the word bara in Hebrew, and you might remember we've talked a little bit about the difference between bara and asa. You know, God can both bara and asa, but humans are the only individuals that can humans, I said that all wrong. God can bara and asa. Humans can only asa, but they cannot bara. God is the only one that can bara. And that's the word used here in Genesis chapter 1 in verse 27. But then notice the repetition of image again. The text is stressing to us that humans are special. They are in a way, the let's see, how would I say that? They're, I guess, the best way to sum that up is they occupy a very special role. That's what we should say. In creation, they are at the height of the created order. God has invested humanity with authority over the rest of creation, over the animals and the plants, and by extension, the entire earth. But then notice the end of Genesis chapter 1 and verse 27. Male and female, he created them. Well, why in the world is male and female at the beginning? Why doesn't it follow the verb created in Genesis? Well, it's for emphasis, right? God assigns sexuality to created beings. Now, that's interesting, and it says a lot to us as human beings. Number one, the fact that God assigned sexuality to created beings, human beings, says to us that human nature, although humans are made in the image of likeness of God, they are still not identical to God. Their nature is in some way different. But then it is to say to humans that male and females have certain characteristics. Males have certain qualities that are different from females. Females have certain qualities that are different than males. And we ought to learn to appreciate and notice those qualities in both male and females. I think I'm comfortable in saying that a failure to appreciate certain qualities in males and a failure to appreciate certain qualities in females is to restrict our view of God, because he has created both. But then, number one, emphasizing sexuality highlights the future and potential blessing of fertility. It's one thing that humans are capable of procreating. It's one thing to be capable. It's another thing for that to actually be actualized. We understand that just because human beings have the capability of procreating doesn't mean that they are necessarily going to be able to actualize that blessing. That blessing is given by God, the blessing namely of fertility. Now, notice that both male and female are made in the image of God. So males are no better than females, and females are no better than males. But then notice, too, that humans are capable of of building and fostering human relationships. The most basic relationship, reciprocating relationship, obviously, is between male and female. Not between male and male, not between female and female, but between male and female. That was God's design. But then humans also have the ability to form communities. We recognize this. They have the ability to also understand language. Notice that God gives commands to human beings, and God expects human beings to understand and fulfill His commands, His obligations. So the fact that humans can understand words allows them to understand concepts. Because they're allowed to, or capable of understanding concepts, they have the ability to plan. Because they have the ability to plan and understand concepts, humans have the ability to evaluate certain things. Because ultimately humans are able to understand words and understand language, humans are responsible for their actions. This is why God demands obedience, right? Well, that was sort of a mouthful, but that verse is packed with a lot of information. So we can go to verse 28 now and read through verse 31. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God said, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with its seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life. I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. And God saw everything that He had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Notice again how humanity is at the apex of the created order, right? God has given humanity special authority, namely to govern the created world. Now, this comes with responsibility, right? Human beings are not to take advantage of the animals. Human beings are to care for the animals and to ensure their well-being. Anything less would be a distortion of what God had in mind. But so notice, humans are to rule over the animal kingdom, and by extension over the entire earth. So they're to treat the animal kingdom as if they are monarchs ruling over a certain realm. We as humans have a certain responsibility to ensure the safety and well-being of the animals that God has put us over. But notice too that humans are to subdue it, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. This is, be masters over the animal kingdom and over the world. And then notice the diet of humans at this point in time is restricted to, you have the fruits of the trees and you have plants. Let's see. Of course, God evaluates His creation. It is said to be good. Chapter 2, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them." So that's sort of a wrap it up summary statement, right, of what we've just seen in chapter 1. "And on the seventh day, God finished His work that He had done, and He rested on the seventh day from all His work that He had done." So God is done creating, right? Still notice that God is the sovereign Lord. He can step away from creating. It's not like He's dependent on the creation that He just created, and so let's point that out. Then verse 3, "So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all His work that He had done in creation." Notice the theme throughout Genesis chapter 1. God is the sovereign Lord, right? But notice here in Genesis chapter 2, God is the sovereign Lord over time. God has the ability to separate time, to make distinctions between, regular time and holy time. Humans were never meant to be slaves to work. Now, notice that God expected human beings to work. Okay, He expected them, in a sense, to be busy with something. But He never intended them to be, like we just said, slaves to that work. He intended for human beings to step back and have the ability to take a break and to rest from their work. He expected them to, enjoy the benefit and blessing of the created world. Of course, we know that the Sabbath day allowed the Israelites, we'll get into that more when we talk about the Sabbath again. We're not going to get into the next section. There's way too much to say, and I don't want to split that up. So we'll finish there. I hope you're enjoying the study of the book of Genesis. It's such a great book. I can't wait to see everybody Sunday. God bless.